James, you're a little early. The other part starts at 4:15.
Our part starts at 4:15?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
You're welcome to stay.
No, I work 2 days a week at PBCC, so I just got off of Zoom since 11 o'clock this morning.
Gotcha.
So I'll come back at 4:15.
Perfect.
Okay, thanks, Aaron.
Thank you. Okay, I'll give it another 2 minutes. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to give a brief background intro real quick before we get into the scoring. So the city had a request for proposals from October 1st to October 16 on 3 different grants. The Cdbg Cv3, also known as Community Development Block Grant Coronavirus number 3. CDBG and Home. These are the two entitlement grants we get every year. CDBG and Home become available next year, starting July 1st. Cdbg Cv3 becomes available as soon as City Council approves the budget and HUD approves the amended action plan. All applicants prior to application submittal went through a mandatory pre-application technical assistance meeting with me. So during that 30 to 45-minute meeting, we covered an application, like how to fill out an application workshop. We also covered the federal grant requirements for CDBG and Home. So this covered all the income requirements, the environmental reviews, the federal grant paperwork that comes with running CDBG and Home. And then we covered each applicant's program details that they would be carrying out under either CDBG or Home or CV3. I met with a total of 12 applicants. We ended up receiving 8 submissions. A couple of them realized that, CDBG and Home isn't really the program for them and just ended up not applying. Or they realized that they want to apply next year and they wanted to get kind of a good basis understanding for what these programs entail so they can better prepare for next year. There was one change to the scoring element this year, and that's the outstanding funding element. This was to address the HUD timeliness concern. That's the 24 CFR 570-902. So essentially, applicants with outstanding CDBG and Home funds may not be receiving as strong of a consideration during this application process. Now, I told applicants that doesn't mean that you can't apply. You can still apply, but you just won't be receiving as strong of a consideration if you do have outstanding funds. And that's part of HUD's best subrecipient timeliness management practices. This also helps encourage new applicants come into the CDBG and Home program, and it helps the city and subrecipients stay in compliance with CDBG and Home programs, just federally. So I do see that we have some CDBG task force members here as well. Just as a layout for the agenda, we're going to cover all the econ related applications first with the Strategic Action Team Subcommittee. So that's from 3:30 to 4:15. And then from 4:15 to 5:30, we'll do the regular public service and housing application review with the CDBG task force. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, can we see the spreadsheet? I'm guessing that's a yes.
Can you scroll up just a little bit there? Or
Up?
make it larger or something?
I can
All
make it
right,
larger.
No, I see what we're looking at. I can see what we're looking at. Thanks.
So I guess 3 areas or 2 areas we're going to be looking at is this row, the CIC econ for CDBG Cv3, and then the section down here for CDBG econ. So I suggest that we go ahead and handle the CDBG econ first, then tackle the CV3.
Quick question, Erin. Were we supposed to review the CIC econ?
Yes,
I don't think it was in my packet.
it was.
The only 2 I did were the LEAP and the CIC down below.
Yeah, me too.
That's the only 2 I did also.
They were both in the same packet.
The only score sheets I sent back were for the LEAP and the CIC.
Me too.
But I see the budget for the CIC 130,000 and then 15 is 145,970 total in what we received.
That's right. Both were in the same proposal. I
That's
believe.
right.
Oh, okay, okay. So that's why the scores are identical.
Yes, you were
Okay.
scoring in the same, yeah, application. Mhm.
Okay, where do you want us to start? How can we be helpful?
So I would start with the CDBG Econ section, and you guys have several options. You can either fully fund both programs, since there is enough budgeted out for CDBG, or you can decide not to fund them, or you can fund one or not the other. You have a lot of options.
Can we fund more than they requested?
Yes, we do have, let me check who's in the audience. We do have one member from CIC here and LEAP here who can answer whether they'd be able to manage extra funding.
One of the thoughts that I had were related to the micro grant program is that I felt like the funds, while they would be helpful, may not be a game changer for some of the businesses because the amounts are so low, and we have been in this damn-demic for a long time. So, you know, I'm wondering whether that amount could be increased.
So you're asking about whether the grants to the businesses be increased?
Yes.
I believe they would be. That would just mean that they take on less businesses for that program. Let me see. Stephen Davis, I see you're in the audience. Do you want to try to address that question?
Yeah, and what I was suggesting is increasing the amount of that part of the grant so that they can provide more funding to the same number of people rather than reducing the number of people they're assisting.
Stephen, this is Brian Wheeler. I enabled your microphone.
Hi, this is Anna. Thank you very much. Stephen, are you on as well? Oh, no. Okay. Yes, we can do larger grants and can handle extra funding. And it's up to you. We would prefer, I guess, to do larger grants per business, but we could do more grants in that same small size instead. But yes, Gretchen, it would make a bigger difference if we could give larger grants with more funding. Does that answer your question?
That answers my question.
Thank you.
So am I reading this right, that there is $17,000 undesignated right now in the CDBG Econ category?
Correct.
So I would like to suggest adding at least part of that to the 15,000.
Okay.
And just, Aaron, is it important that we also state that that would be for the micro grants? Or is that, Gretchen, was that your intent?
My intent was to use additional dollars to increase the size of the micro grants, not the number of people, a number of businesses receiving micro grants.
I agree with that.
I also agree with that.
Okay, so fully fund CIC, and then how much of the 17,000 do you guys want to add on?
Can we discuss that after we discuss the LEAP application?
Sure.
I had some difficulty with the LEAP application, just because it was different from other things that we've considered, specifically with an absence of real data. It didn't seem to be a data-driven, so therefore hard to measure effectiveness other than the purpose of the project is clearly going to help people. So I would appreciate others' thoughts on that when it comes to how we fund them and whether or not CDBG is the right place to do it.
I would echo some of Sue's concerns. Also, again, I guess the word, the dosage of this seems fairly narrow. 2 jobs and 15 houses. And so for those 15, 17 households, it's going to make a big difference. But and I guess for that amount of money, that's reasonable, $2,000 per household. I do like the concept of finding ex-offenders sustainable jobs. I had some question about whether, and I don't know if anybody from LEAP is here, but whether LEAP has experience working with that population in particular and helping people, previously incarcerated people, move into the workforce, whether they have any expertise in that kind of work. The other thing I liked about this application is it seemed much more focused in the target neighborhood than the CIC application. And by way of disclosure, I happen to live in that neighborhood. So, but my comments I don't think are specifically related to that.
We do have Chris Meyer from LEAP here in the audience with us. He might be able to address some of your questions. Chris, if you want to tackle some of Gretchen's questions.
Good afternoon, and thank you everybody for taking the time to, again, review this. Let's say specifically, I think there was a question about LEAP's experience with working with past felons or recently released individuals. The last 4 months, we have been working with the Office of Economic Development in the Home to Hope program, where we've taken one individual and basically done with them what we're proposing to do again here, where we hired them out of that Home to Hope program full-time, gave them $15 an hour job plus benefits, trained them basically as they worked, along with our team, and now getting them additional training. Leap's office in the Ridge Street neighborhood is technically owned by the city and has got an apartment basement that we cannot use. And so we've leveraged that also to give the person a free residence and to kind of reduce potential problems with getting to work, et cetera, you might say. So that has worked. That person has graduated and moved out of the apartment, has stopped being subsidized by the Home to Hope program. He's fully getting paid with us. We've had some issues with the person as they've learned, you might say, on how to work with us and a job with not showing up to work a couple of days, for example. But, as we've done that, and worked with the person, focused on a long-term or medium to long-term career with us and increased his pay also. And have helped him, for example, just this week, get some services from Region 10 to deal with some of the issues from his incarceration. And then finally, I'll just say is we just brought in 2 weeks ago, a second person. So we're now on our second. And again, they moved into the apartment, they're getting trained, and all that's starting to happen. And we're pretty excited about that. So I wouldn't say this is not, of course, Leap's purpose necessarily, but is a strategy that we are using to build our workforce out. Thanks. I don't know if there's any questions about that, or I guess other parts of the proposal. That was, I think, specific to the econ development component.
I have one question with this. Are you going to be focusing on homes that are owned by low-income folks, or are these rental properties that the people benefiting that are renters will benefit and lower costs to their energy cost,
Yeah.
but the owners of these rentals may be wealthy folks who will benefit from not having to upgrade their properties in this manner?
Correct. Leap has a program, I think what you're talking about, that we announced, and we're working with CRHA, for example, that does work with rental. This specific proposal, though, and I'm sorry if it wasn't clear in it, is focused on homeowners. So you have to, if you're going to receive a benefit from the other pieces of our proposal, which I think is under Cdbg, another component, and not the economic component, and the home component, yes, you have to be a low income owner of your house.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any additional questions? Do you guys have a recommendation about the scoring?
So it seems like our option is to put all of the over the $17,056.28 into CIC if they feel that they can increase the microloans to the target number of businesses. Were there any other options?
So this overage, there's a couple of things you can do with it. One thing is you could put the extra money into LEAP and CIC. The other thing is I could take the 17 and put it into housing down here.
Mm-hmm.
The other option would be to take the 17 and to put it into Ridge Street Priority Neighborhood Task Force funding, which is budgeted at $150,000 right now. So those are your three choices.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to recommend funding LEAP at the level requested and moving the 17,05628 into CIC's award so that they can increase the amount of the microloans to the proposed businesses.
This is Kelly. I agree with Gretchen's recommendation.
I do too.
Okay.
And I think that's appropriate.
And now I'm going to go up here. So we have the Cdbg Cv3, the CIC Econ. They're requesting $130,970. So this is basically a continuation of what they were funded for the first Cdbg Cv program or application period.
I think it's kind of hard to make a recommendation on this since we didn't review the other applications in this category. You know, based on my review, I would certainly recommend continuing the funding, but I'm not sure how you prioritize amongst the 4 applicants since we haven't looked at the other applications.
I think that's a great point.
So for the CV3, this is something that we did the last time too. We made a recommendation for just the econ without looking at the public service, you know, how we normally do the application review. You do have the option to not fund CIC and to put the 130,000 into the public service category if you would like to. But that is your option.
Did the people who reviewed the CRHA Habitat and Pearl Transit applications review the CIC application as well?
No. No. So the strategic action team only reviews the econ applications, and the CDBG task force only reviews the public service and housing related applications. That's how our citizen participation plan for the community development block grant is written.
So Erin, I'm sorry if this is a naive question, but so can the overage only go to an econ program, or could it be allocated somewhere else?
So for Cv3, the overage can go anywhere. You can, there's no cap on funding for the COVID related funding. So you can put it into public services, but only for coronavirus public services. You can't take the overage from Cv3 econ and put it like down here into housing or somewhere else.
I think that's what we're getting at, is it's hard to have a recommendation about that without seeing the other proposals. I certainly support continue level funding of CIC, but I don't really have any thoughts on the overage because I did not look at the other proposals.
As I'm reading this, the amount budgeted for econ is 134,009.60.
Correct.
And the amount requested is, $4,000 less than that. So if that money were not to be used for CIC econ, would it go into the pool for the other three?
That is correct.
Okay. But none of the other three are econ applications.
No.
So there's 134,000 allocated for econ, 130 requested. So I would recommend that it be funded at the 139.70.
Yeah, I agree with that. It seems like a reasonable recommendation.
So all three, so everyone says yes to this one?
I agree.
Okay, then I want to go do roll call real quick just to say yay or nay for both funding categories before we leave for the next task force at 4:15. So for CDBG Econ, the strategic action team is recommending we fully fund LEAP at the $29,238 and CIC at $32,056.28. So Sue Moffett,
Yes.
Diane Cupnio, Gretchen Ellis,
Yes.
and Kelly Logan.
Yes.
Okay. And then for CDBG Cv3, so this is the Community Development Block Grant Coronavirus. The strategic action team is recommending to fund CIC for the econ application at $130,970. Sue Moffett,
Yes.
Diane Cupnio,
Yes.
Gretchen Ellis,
Yes.
and Kelly Logan. I think you're on mute.
Oh, I keep freezing, but yes.
Okay. All right, awesome. Any other business from the strategic action team? Okay, perfect. Any public comment for this section, the econ section of the strategic action team? If you raise your hand on the Zoom webinar, I can call on you. Looks like we have one person so far. Cutter Huston, you're on with the strategic action team. You'll have to unmute your microphone.
Hi, I'm so sorry. I did not think my hand was raised.
That's okay.
No comment.
I see no other hands raised. So you guys are free to go. Thank you guys for helping me out with this. The next meeting will start at 4:15, and that's the full Cdbg task force.
Thank you, Erin.
No problem. Thank you.
Erin,
Yes.
it's Kim.
Hi, Kim.
So while we're here alone together, or maybe not, anyway, you got any solutions for me as far as being able to get what you send out? I downloaded the app. That didn't help.
I sent you a PDF. Did that not go through?
You sent me one thing that, what was that? That was just sort of how everybody commented on the homework. I got that. Then you sent me something else and I could not open it. And it said, oh, well, you need to download one something. And so I did. And that didn't help. I mean, I don't have an antiquated system.
I'm gonna resend you what I last sent you.
Okay, because
The
I tried
PDF
to
document.
download it on my phone and I tried to download it through my computer and neither one worked. Okay, so you're sending that now?
Mhm.
Okay. We shall see. Probably going to take a little bit of time. Well, it hadn't come through yet. I mean, it has a long way to travel. Back in Mexico. But I was able to walk the streets and look at things, while I was home. And so that one area right by part of the sidewalk that's missing is actually on my property, but I had heard from my neighbors that when that subdivision was built, people could opt out of getting a sidewalk run. So the people right next door to me didn't do it, but they also didn't do part of my property, which is interesting. And then across the street, there's two houses that don't have any sidewalk. So everybody has to come out and walk up the hill on Brookwood or down the hill on Brookwood in the street with dogs and strollers and all that stuff.
But we'll be able to see tomorrow. Hopefully it's not raining.
Okay, let me see if it's come in yet. Nothing. Not yet.
All right, I'll send it one by one.
What does that mean? Online status, try again. Okay. Not yet.
Okay, I sent you a couple of emails, so hopefully you'll
Okay.
get there.
Yeah. Online status. Nope. What's that? Oh, I'll check my phone since I can't seem to get anything here, but I haven't heard anything. Oh yeah, I got it on my phone. I haven't gotten it on my computer.
Okay.
Let's see. Now more stuff from you just came in, 2 different things. PowerPoint, I don't know. Yeah, I got the PowerPoint, the Priority Neighborhood Task Force. Well, what's it called? CBD Ridge, I don't know, Ridge Street.
Yep.
Okay, introduction, housekeeping minutes, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so that's done. And then map only. Yeah, I got the map before. I could see the map, but I couldn't see whatever else you sent. Well, it was neat that you had the traffic guy on last time, since there I was talking about traffic. Did you know we were on TV?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know till people started writing me. Kim, you're awesome. You're in Mexico and you're on TV in Charlottesville? I said, I didn't know that. Okay, so the 2 things that you sent separately are this binder, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I've got it. Good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. It still hasn't come in. There's some sort of a thing. I might have to shut my account error. Oh. Something's wrong with my computer. Okay, I'm gonna shut my computer down. I'll be back. See if that helps.
Sounds good. All right, I'll give it a couple more minutes.
Kim, this is Brian Wheeler with City Communications. Looks like your audio is not enabled. And we can't hear you at the moment.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So I did a brief intro for the first subcommittee. I'll do the same for you guys as well. Starting October 1st through October 16th, the city had a request for proposals for 3 separate grants. The Cdbg Cv3, that's the coronavirus specific Cdbg grant, the Cdbg and the home grant. The home and Cdbg become available starting July 1st, 2021. And the CV3 grant, that's the coronavirus one, becomes available as soon as City Council approves the budget and as soon as HUD approves the annual or the amendment to the annual action plan. So all applicants, before they submitted an application for either CV3, Cdbg, or home, they had to undergo a pre-application mandatory technical assistance meeting with me. During that meeting, we went over the application requirements, so the federal grant requirements, all the paperwork that comes with Cdbg and home, like the income guidelines, certifying everyone is eligible for Cdbg and home, all the environmental reviews, and so on and so forth. Each program details for all the applicants and how to fill out the application as well. That was a new addition to this year. I met with a total of 12 applicants, and we ended up getting 8 applications. A couple of them realized that Cdbg wasn't the right grant for them, or they realized that right now isn't the right time to be pursuing a federal grant, so they were going to try again next year. But nevertheless, we did get some new application or new faces this round. Hopefully we'll get some more next year. There was one change to the scoring element, and that's the outstanding funding element. So this is to address the HUD timeliness concerns. Applicants with outstanding Cdbg and home funds might not be receiving as strong of a consideration in this application process. And again, this is to address the HUD subrecipient timeliness concern. The citation is 24 CFR 57902A. It's one of HUD's best practices for managing subrecipient timeliness. This encourages new applicants to join the Cdbg and home application pool, and it helps the city and subrecipients stay on track with HUD, Cdbg, and home federal compliance program guidelines. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. There it is. Are we all able to see the spreadsheet? Yes, good. Okay, so the strategic action team met just before you guys did, and they decided on the econ funding proposal. So the CV3 econ has been set at the 130,000, and then the Cdbg econ applications have also been decided. So I'm going to suggest that you guys start with the Cdbg applications for public service and housing, since those are easy to tackle right away. And then we move on to home and CV3, since those will have more of a discussion involved. Is everyone able to see Cdbg public services? I can make it bigger. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the one, if you remember, way back when we had our first tutorial basic introduction. For Cdbg public services, we have to keep this at the maximum 15% of the entitlement. So I have that budgeted out here at the $62,905.05. It looks like both applicants would be able to get full funding without having to worry about passing that 15% marker.
LVCA.
LVCA is the Literacy Volunteers for Charlottesville and Albemarle.
Oh, I'm one of them. Okay. It looked kind of familiar.
What happens to the 3905?
3905.
That's the overage. That's the amount not allocated.
Okay. So you have a couple of options for the overage. You can either put that into housing, or you can put that into the Ridge Street Priority Neighborhood Task Force. And that's budgeted at $150,000 right now.
Okay.
So just to be, this is Emily, just to be clear, if we wanted to, we could migrate funds away from this to somewhere else.
Correct.
If we decided we didn't want to fully fund these two programs.
Yes.
That might be moved elsewhere. Okay, just checking. Thank you.
Yeah. We just can't exceed that 62,000.
Gotcha.
So LEAP, can you tell us what, am I jumping ahead? I'm just wondering what LEAP is planning to do with their money, because I didn't read all this stuff. So that's just to upgrade the houses for more efficient use of heat and air conditioning and all those kind of things.
Yeah, they're doing a low income assisted home performance program.
Okay.
It also involved hiring 2 employees.
Wow.
Correct.
So right now we could, both sides, all of this fits within the budgeted request. There's about $8,100 left over. Is that right, Aaron? 8,200.
Yes.
Okay.
And
What do you need from us?
So I need a funding recommendation from you guys.
It looks like it's already been decided. Or we have to vote on what is sitting in front of us.
Do you want to fully fund each program?
What are other options? That's, I guess, what I want to know.
So you can either partially fund them, you can not fund them at all and move the funds somewhere else. Yeah, those would be other 2 options.
Okay, so what are those other possibilities?
So you could, if we're looking at public services alone, you could either partially fund both of them, you could fully fund both of them, you could fully fund one or partially fund the other and vice versa, or you can move funds to housing or move funds to the Ridge Street Priority Neighborhood Task Force.
Lost. Where is that Ridge Street Priority Task Force agenda? I mean, is that part of what we were voting on or issues that we're concerned about?
So they're budgeted at $150,000. So remember, that's the portion of the grant we automatically take aside at $150,000 each year. And then the remaining entitlement amount gets split out into public services, housing, and econ.
I think can I just suggest we fully fund FAR and LVCA? Just establish that to start.
Okay.
They both got good scores. They both got the same score. Their funding requests fit within the kind of suggested budget for that category with a little money left over. Maybe that'd be my suggestion. We solidify that and then maybe make a decision on where we want to roll those funds into.
I'd like to second that decision, Matthew.
I certainly would agree.
And I would agree also.
Okay.
Yep, I'm fine with that.
And then maybe we could make a decision about that where LEAP is the only one that requested in that particular category, whether or not to fund them fully. And if we do decide to fund them fully, then we'd have the 4,000-ish from those two categories that would be extra 8,000 total. Maybe after we decide if we were going to fund LEAP fully, we could decide then what to do with that $8,000, which whether or not to put it in the Ridge Street priority versus the housing.
Yep.
Aaron, is the housing money also the only other location, like public services, the only other location it can move to is the Ridge Street Task Force, or can it go somewhere else too?
No, you got it correctly. It could only go to either the CDBG housing or the Ridge Street Priority Neighborhood Task Force.
Then it seems like we should just fund that too, since it's under budget and we don't really, we can't migrate the money to many other locations.
So I have a question about all of these things is, since this is Ridge Street, is this all Ridge Street priority money? I mean, this CBDG is really focused on the Ridge Street neighborhood, correct? Or not?
So yes, but
FAR or literacy volunteers or LEAP, is it allocated just for the Ridge Street neighborhood? It seems like it would go to whoever wants it.
So this portion of the grant, anyone in Charlottesville who's eligible is allowed to apply. The Ridge Street Priority Neighborhood is the designated focus. So these organizations that are applying for housing, public services, and econ, like FAR, Literacy Volunteers, and LEAP, they're offering services in Ridge Street Priority Neighborhood. That doesn't necessarily mean they have to offer services in that area. They can offer services outside within the city limits. But some of them are offering services within Ridge Street Priority Neighborhood. That doesn't mean that the grant is specific for.
It's not
correct.
exclusive. Okay.
Yeah.
I think the suggestion was made that we fully fund LEAP for that 57,000. I would agree with that suggestion.
So would I.
I agree.
I do as well.
So that leaves $8,199.33 in overage from public services and housing.
So yeah, what options do we
The
have?
question is the hiring of new people and whether, whether that's the best use of our funds for Ridge Street.
Could you repeat that?
I said my question in the LEAP amount is that it's also it's for hiring 2 people and whether that's the best use of our money for Ridge Street.
Well,
So
one thing,
Go ahead, sorry.
sorry, Erin. One thing that I did want to maybe bring to you guys' attention is that's actually something that the Ridge Street Task Force just discussed at its last meeting, that they wanted to provide more opportunities for the residents that it served to have more skilled labor and trade jobs of that nature.
So that's the direction that funding would go in.
Well, I do know that that was one of the top priorities of the Ridge Street Task Force neighborhood meeting that we just had.
Yeah.
And so being that LEAP is going to be servicing the Ridge Street neighborhood, I do feel like that definitely aligns with what they have discussed that they want to see.
Well, it would be good if that were the case. That's all I'm saying. It would be good if that were the case. I just keep wondering it, are we hiring 2 people from the Ridge Street neighborhood to take those jobs, and do they get more skilled training in that hiring?
I see Chris Meyer from LEAP, his hand is raised. I'm going to let him talk and answer your question, Kim.
Okay, great.
Chris, you're on with the task force.
Yeah, and thanks everybody for taking the time this afternoon. I LEAP, and Erin, please help me here, put together a proposal that I think tries to take advantage of the multiple different buckets you guys are seeing here. And so and unfortunately, each bucket didn't have its own application. So I combined a proposal for the CDBG housing, the home program, and I think what was called the CDBG econ. In a previous meeting, and correct me if I'm wrong, Erin, the funding of the 2 employees was actually approved with a different bucket of money.
Yes, so Kim, under the CDBG econ, the employees would be funded through that LEAP line item right here.
And what will happen is of course, I've talked with Ms. Harris after the meeting. Of course, I think some of you know that I'm on the Ridge Street CDBG committee also. The other day and forwarded on to a job description to her, and hopefully we can find some people there. That the positions that will be hired, though, obviously aren't being funded until July of next year at the earliest. And of course, we're hiring before then too, so we'll see how this all works. But so it is, unfortunately, I just want to say there's some mixing and matching, you might say, in the big proposal that you're probably reading, that again is targeted though at kind of each bucket of money, you might say. I'm sorry, I hope that clarifies some things. If not, I'm sorry, I confused you further.
No, it's really muddy, but that's part of being in 3 different pots.
Buckets.
I'll blame the federal government for making it difficult.
I'll just go along with what everybody else thinks is okay, I guess.
So just to make sure I'm at least semi-clear, Erin and Chris, the 29,238 that LEAP is going to be recommended to get for the econ part, plus the 57,000 we were at least discussing giving them, those 2 things it's okay if if both of those things happen?
Yes.
Okay.
And there's another 57,000 in home that's being asked for. So that's a third pot that builds into that.
Correct. And just on that 57,000 in housing, that is to service 10 homes with approximately, on average, $5,000 worth of improvements, energy efficiency improvements, like repairing or replacing heating or cooling system, insulation, etc. There's some money in there for marketing and a little bit of administration also. And it's the same thing and the basically same program proposal would be in the home. We just match it up into how much money that was potentially available, or split it up into how much money was potentially available. I'll stop there.
Aaron, I have another question. Is the money that's in the Cdbg Cv3, that money has to stay in there? That can't be shifted into like the home or any other area. Is that correct?
Correct. That's a separate grant.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to be sure. And part of why I'm asking is just like in my mind, I'm seeing that like Habitat has applied for both the home money and the Cdbg Cv3 money, and they scored really well in the Cdbg Cv3 money, and also in the home money. But I'm just kind of trying to think through how different applicants could also have access to the money, since CRHA seems to have a huge request that they're asking for as well. But does it make sense for us to start talking about the home applicants now?
Yes, we can switch over to home.
Matthew, Habitat's requests were for very, very different things though.
Yeah.
In the two applications. So they really had nothing to do with each other. Unlike LEAP's application, which was all the same thing.
Could you, for my sake and for others' sake, Harold, just explain what the differences were between the two applications by Habitat as you understood it?
Sure. The one under home was simply down payment assistance for Habitat's clients. The one that was in the COVID relief package was to help citywide people with mortgage payments and rent payments. They were going to set up a financial assistance program, utility payments for a variety for the whole throughout the city. So that's the difference.
I guess that was one of my concerns that I had. And I'm and not that it's a major concern, but I was just wondering, I was under the impression that Habitat only recruited and dealt with people that were coming into their home ownership program. Is that not the case? Does somebody know?
It seemed from their application that they were offering to do something different than what they normally do.
Right.
Right. So, I mean, that's all I could judge it by, was that they have the capacity to do what they propose. It's not something that I've ever seen them do before.
I do have Ruth Stone from Habitat. Her hand is raised. I'm going to let her talk real quick to see if she can answer some of your questions.
Thank you.
Ruth, you're on with the task force. You'll have to unmute your mic.
Thank you all so much. If you were familiar with Habitat over the past few years, one of our flagship programs has been our Pathways to Housing program. And this program reaches out to people who are not yet ready for Habitat homeownership. These are typically folks who are lower end on the AMI scale. And the goal of that program is of course, financial empowerment and helping people get to better housing choices. So one doesn't necessarily have to buy a home in the Habitat program to be a part of this program. We've had people who have improved their financial situations enough that they have been able to buy homes on the open market, and we partner with CAR in order to help find such homes. We also have people who choose to just find better living situations. So it may be a rental situation. You know, they may be doubled up in their parents' houses or things like that. And then we have people who then want to apply to the Habitat program, and we have folks who successfully do that as well. So the CDB or the CV funding that is the other part of this application is really directed toward the kind of financial empowerment, coaching, navigation services that we have developed through the Pathways program to make it, and then we want to make it available to more people. We know that COVID is having a big impact right now on folks throughout the city. We have people calling us who need help finding jobs, need help with not down payment, I apologize. They are being evicted and they need assistance with their utility deposits, et cetera. So yes, we've been doing the Pathways program for a couple years now, and this is just building on that for the COVID situation right now. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. But that definitely was not clear in the application, so I appreciate that clarification.
Yeah.
Let me just suggest this with the home funds. Since we've already awarded LEAP $57,000, we not award them money from the home funds. And then that's one suggestion. The second suggestion would be to fully fund Habitat's $24,000 request and then give the remainder of the projected budget to AHIP's request. So that'd be about $56,000 to AHIP. That's just a suggestion to get us moving.
Doesn't Habitat have down payment money from past years that they haven't used?
Keep in mind of the outstanding funding, I do need to provide reasoning as to why we're re-awarding an organization with funds back dating to 2018.
Right. So Aaron, do you know how Habitat does have down payment money they haven't used, correct?
Correct.
Do you know how much?
$14,813.52.
You know, AHIP's proposal was to do one house completely. And I don't know whether getting a greatly reduced amount of funding will make that project impossible, number one. And LEAP, while they got this thing in all different buckets, is going to serve probably 10 families with the money that they're requesting. So I just offer that as consideration for how this money gets spent.
I think Howard, I like that consideration. I would like to also offer the consideration of one, as we just said, Habitat hasn't spent all of its prior funding. And then also, I could have sworn through the application, Habitat is leveraging to complete these projects with some of the other things that were funding or that was funded earlier from the previous meeting. Am I correct, Aaron?
I'm sorry, say that again.
So I was under the impression that not only did Habitat have funding that it still had not spent on time, but that also it was leveraging some of its funds, or it gets leveraged in completing these projects, excuse me, from some of the, was some of that money from CIC, or I could have, or either in the application, it looks like they're leveraging from other people who are applying for funds to make their project happen.
I did not see that in there.
Okay, let me see if I can pull it up.
I think that was AHIP that talked about that.
And that could be, they could be running together, but for some reason, I could have sworn, and maybe I thought it was Habitat, maybe it was AHIP. I'm gonna pull it back up, that one of these had part of its leverage was from funds of another program that also was applying for funds, if that makes sense.
So the note I have, and can't tell you where the citation is, but was that they expected the total cost at 187,000 for the project that they were asking for. And that they also had some unspent funds. So you might be right about the use of the prior funds in that case. Anyway, these are just notes I wrote. I can't point you to where in the document. I'm sorry.
No worries. Thank you.
Okay, two hands raised real quick. Corey Demchek from AHIP. I'm going to let him speak real quick. Corey, you're on with the task force. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Erin, and thank you, task force members, for your time. I can actually address a number of those concerns. I believe it was Howard pointed out that AHIP is serving one house with the home funds in our proposal. That's absolutely correct, but to borrow from Chris Meyer's comment about the buckets of funding, we do use very many different buckets. No funding source is ever sufficient to do a rehab, especially when we're talking about years and years of deferred maintenance and just real lack of care for these homes and what it takes to bring them back to safe and living standards. So while we are serving one home with this house, or one household with the home funds, in a typical year, we do between 10 and 20 rehabs for city homeowners. And through our emergency repair program, we'd serve another approximately 30 households. Because we're dumping this bucket, as we said, into one house, it just reduces the amount of administration to use these funds. As Aaron's aware, there's a lot of pre-project work anytime you're using federal funds. And we can cut down on the amount of administration by doing fewer projects with the funds. I think it was Ms. Dow had mentioned leveraging other funds. To that point, I said no single funding source has ever been sufficient to address a city rehab project. Just between the last 5 fiscal years, we've never funded a rehab with only home funds. We often layer in many public and private funding sources to cover the cost of repairs. And by doing that, we're able to ensure that there's no burden on the homeowner. We also bring in weatherization funds by partnering with LEAP. We have in-kind service donations of goods and materials from private industry, our partners in private industry, as well as volunteer labor and the private dollars that we fundraise to go into these projects. And my last note, I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot here, was about unspent funds. We do have unspent funds from prior funding years. The way that our pipeline works, we can't start a project until the funds are approved and allocated. So we're kind of already behind the 8 ball because we have at any given time as many as 20 projects going on that are already underway. So once the projects are approved or the funding is approved, the project starts with the income verification, all the paperwork, the environmental review, the historical reviews. Then we start with all the specialty inspections, the inspection by our rehab specialist, the estimating process, the bidding, developing a scope of work. Sometimes we run into problems with the title or the deed or family members when there's multiple owners of a property signing off on all the work. Then we have to go through the city's approval process for approving the funding. And then we finally get to construction. So we are behind on some of the other projects. We're getting ready to close out all of our FY18 projects. I believe we still have 2 open with the city, and we're getting ready to start on, not FY18, we're not that far behind. FY20, 2 FY20 projects. We're getting ready to close out. I think, Aaron, you may actually have an email on one of those. And then we have an FY21 project getting ready to start. So yes, we have unspent funds, but it's kind of the nature of the beast. There's no way to be up to date with those. Happy to address any other comments or questions.
So I appreciate that. I just think that goes back to what I was saying. So maybe it wasn't Habitat, it was AHIP, where if we're funding LEAP, and he just said that they're leveraging funds from LEAP. So is it like we're double funding the AHIP project? Not that it matters. That was just a question. I had.
No, it's a different program.
Okay, thank you.
How would it
One more
affect
hand.
you if we only partially funded it?
Pardon?
I was asking Chris, how would it affect them if we only partially funded their request?
Chris Meyer, I see you in the audience still. Okay, I'm gonna let you talk real quick. Chris, you're on with the task force. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, thanks everybody. I'll say we kind of see this as incremental. So it's kind of each house again is just needs are usually about $5,000. Like Corey and AHIP, we're usually bringing different pots of money. From Dominion, we just got a big grant, so, and from other city programs we have, it's, yeah. So, we can, at the moment, we have an existing pot of money that's directly from the city, but that was not allocated this year. So we're basically done with that, and we're replicating that. And we'd like to get as much. We used to do $125,000 a year worth. That was from the capital improvement program. This allocation is only requesting 110. And we don't know what we're not expecting to get money in the CIP next year. So we would be going down from 25 houses a year, basically down to well, just if you did 10 houses and the 57, basically that would be it. We're reducing the amount we're doing. It's about $5,000 every house again, sorry. So you could take us up or down, and again, each house is a different beast to a certain extent, again, has different problems, has different costs, but we can use every dollar too.
And there's one more hand raised. Thank you, Chris. Ruth, you're on with the task force. You'll have to unmute yourself. Ruth is from Habitat.
Hi, yeah, I want to thank Chris for giving a very wonderful explanation about the approval process. That is the thing that is often what holds up the details and the timelines. The whole entitlement and approval process is complex. The 4 houses or the 4 families that we envisioned for this 24,000 have already selected homes that are existing or right now under construction. So I tailored this to homes that are further along in the process.
Thank you.
Are any of those homes in the Ridge Street neighborhood?
Yes, I believe some of them were.
2 of them are adjacent to the Ridge Street neighborhood. 2 of them are over by Huntley Avenue. Now, and I'm not making this as a commitment that it's going to be exactly the Huntley Avenue homes. And then 2 are in the Venable neighborhood. So, but the other thing you do need to know is that 3 of our home buyers, 3 of the folks in our program right now are from the Ridge Street neighborhood.
Okay, that's good.
I'm sorry if I'm asking a question that was just answered, but just so I'm clear. So the 14,000 that's unspent, was that also down payment assistance?
Correct.
Okay.
seems like a bit of a choice whether we fund AHIP or we fund the other two. The way the money works and it all breaks out. And I have to point out that AHIP was the lowest score of the three. So I don't know where that leaves us in terms of choices.
Well, do we want to first start with fully funded Habitat since they have the highest score?
That sounds good to me.
I'm fine with that as long as Aaron's okay with the issue of the unspent funds. I don't know how that affects things.
I would vote for doing that too, fully funding Habitat.
If the task force votes to
I would
fund
vote.
them. Okay.
I mean, I guess too, the not having funds that aren't spent is a concern, but I feel like they're not the only one who hasn't spent all their funds. And from hearing from each of them, it sounds like it's just the nature of the beast of the type of work that they provide or services that they provide.
Yes and no.
Okay.
The moment you accept home funds, you do want to have these addresses ready to go so I can get these environmental reviews done right away, and then we can finish up the home paperwork. The main issue is if HUD decides that an organization is taking too long, they then take the funds back. And that's what my main concern is. But if the task force moves to recommend full funding of the organization, then we can go forth with that.
Now I have just one other question. Has COVID-19 impacted, or do you have any idea if COVID-19 has impacted them being able to fully spend their funding?
For housing activities in general, there has been a delay on completing activities, especially rehab. We are working around that now, but there has been a slight delay, but we're getting on track now.
Okay, I just wanted to point that out too, that I know just in general, COVID has slowed a lot of, has slowed the world down. So.
Right.
And can I ask my perpetual question, just double checking, this money, can it get moved elsewhere if we don't use it all?
For home, no. Home has to stay in home.
It has to stay here. Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, so let's do some math.
If we give Habitat all that they asked for, then we could do a percentage of the leftover for the other two. Does that make sense? I mean, we have more than, our budget is 80,594, so we can still give a percentage of what the other two wanted, right?
Yep.
I feel like I'm always slow on the math, but is there any sense to funding Habitat at 10,000 so they can use the 14,000 and the 10,000 to come up with 24,000 for those 4 houses that are ready to go?
That is an option, yep.
So that 14,000 that they haven't spent is not already allocated to houses?
I mean, they are waiting to spend it down, yep.
Okay.
Hang on, Ruth has her hand up again.
I think the question was whether they had families that they had already earmarked that money for. It wasn't
right.
What,
yeah,
I believe that they do.
So my thinking is if they already have that money earmarked for families and maybe it just hasn't been able to be spent down due to COVID or housing being slowed up because of COVID, then I don't think that would be able to be allocated for the new projects that they put in the proposal.
I
Is that
believe
right?
they do. Yeah, I believe they do have it earmarked for families. Ruth, do you want to confirm? You can unmute yourself.
Sorry, I'm the one who always does that. Yes, the 14,000 from last year last time is earmarked for specific families in specific homes. This 24 is for different families in different homes.
When do you think those homes will close, Ruth? The ones that are from previous year?
Did we say July or December? I can't remember, Aaron. In what you worked out with Shelley.
There's one supposed to be closing within the next couple of weeks for the Choto project, and then I believe it was December for the other one.
So they're about to use the past funds, is what you're saying.
Okay.
Right, because we don't want to run the risk of HUD having to take funding back.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So in that case, it would make sense to do the full 24,000 for Habitat.
Seems that way.
Yeah, because the 14,000 is going to be gone by the end of the year.
So then that means it looks like if that was the case, we have like 56,594 left. Any ideas on how you would want to divvy that up?
If I recall correctly, with the house that AHIP is proposing renovating, the renovation costs were over $200,000. I think they might have been around 250 or 60. So either, like, regardless of what we decide with AHIP, it'll be just a partial funding of that overall project.
Is that for a single family home?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure would like to get more people in these houses.
What if we did, like just somebody suggested a proportional distribution of the funds? So if we gave AHIP about 2/3 of the remaining funds and LEAP 1/3.
Is there a reason why AHIP is going to get more than LEAP and LEAP scored higher, or is it because we already funded LEAP in the housing sector?
Because AHIP is asking for more.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean anything, so.
Yeah, it's sort of, I think it, from my perspective, it's just a mix. I would like to give everybody all of the money. So it's because it's a combination of LEAP having already gotten some funding and then, yeah, AHIP asking for more money.
I think we need to check with AHIP and see if they only got 40,000, for example, if they could still guarantee they would do it. That might 40,000 short in their budget. Let's say we gave them 40,000 of the 56 that's left or something, or some number. I'm just making it up, but 30,000. Would they still guarantee that they?
My question still is this really going towards Ridge Street housing, or is this somewhere else?
So it doesn't necessarily have to be for Ridge Street. This could be anywhere in Charlottesville.
This house is in Ridge, the AHIP house is in Ridge Street, as
good.
the
Okay.
grant application indicated.
Okay.
Corey, do you want to answer some of the questions asked by the task force?
Sure. So Howard asked if our allocation was reduced, if we would still be able to serve this project. That's a good question. As it stands right now, this our request only funds about 32% of the total construction costs. As I think Mr. Gokin pointed out, the total costs are over $200,000. We do address alternate beneficiaries in our proposal. Sometimes when we have large projects like this, they do stall. They fall through for various reasons. And if that happens, we would just invest the home funds in the Ridge Street neighborhood on similar rehab projects. You know, we do have a very strong fundraising team at AHIP. We fundraise a lot of private funds every year. And if our allocation was reduced, there's an opportunity that we could fundraise additional private funds to put into this project. But it makes it that much harder to fund without this kind of large chunk of funds to put into the project. And then to answer Kem's question, yes, it is in the Ridge Street neighborhood. It's a historic home in the Ridge Street neighborhood. It's very prominent. I'm sure many people would recognize it. It was owned by members of the Tonsler family at one time. Many of the homes around this house have individual historic designations. This particular home does not. There was some discussion by city staff when we met earlier. Somebody had kind of speculated that it was not ever recognized as an individual historic property because it was owned by a Black family at the time. That was just speculation, but it is in the Ridge Street neighborhood. It's a historic house. Yeah. And I think I hit all the points. If I didn't, please let me know.
Thank you.
So I'd like to, I guess, do the formal proposal of the idea of Emily's proportional distribution of the balance of funds. I don't know if anybody's, or second that, I guess.
I'll second that.
So
would this be funded at 2/3?
Basically in the same percentages that their funding represents of the balance, their request represents of the balance, right?
That's fine with me.
I would agree if we took the overage that we had before above from the public services and housing and put that back into LEAP. That would make up some of what they're not getting here, even though they're a higher score. Significantly higher score than AHIP was.
Huh.
Yeah.
So that would be one way to sort of make that work for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
I could live with that.
Yes.
Okay, so the funding proposal for home for LEAP, what was the recommended amount?
There was a proportional split, but I don't know what the proportions are.
Yeah, that's
was
what I didn't catch.
2/3.
2/3
Mm-hmm.
of their asking amount?
Of what the
Of
difference
what's
was, I
left
believe.
of the balance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So would it be like 37,352.04?
Now somebody's faster on the draw than I am.
0.04, you said?
No, no,
I
no.
think. Yeah, you gotta
Okay.
check it. So let's see.
I think you have them flipped.
8594.00 minus 24.0.
500 is left.
So 56594 times 0.66. So the way I figured it out was if the total projected budget was $80,594 and you subtract the 24,000 that we fully funded AHIP at, I came up with $56,594 as the remainder. And then I times it by 0.66% because that's 2/3 of the remaining balance. And that's how I got the 37,352.04, but I could be incorrect.
Right. So that would go to AHIP, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that goes.
Okay.
Okay.
And then
goes to
what you're
AHIP,
saying, Howie, is to take the third plus the leftover of the 4,294 and give that to LEAP.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So just fill that gap, Aaron, with whatever needs to bring it up to 80,594.
But then you're also saying give the leftover, right? From the
Right,
other.
that's up on
Right.
an upper section here.
Okay, before we handle the leftovers, is this what you guys want for the home section?
Looks good to me.
Can
I
we just
guess I
make
believe
it,
it's what we all agreed on.
can
Yeah.
we make it tidier by bumping AHIP up to 38 and LEAP down to 19? It seems like,
It's still not going to be
Pretty.
even if you do it that way.
no, it just will look prettier that way.
Oh,
I can't tell HUD that.
not only that, AHIP got a lower score to me, so bumping them up again, it's like it goes
I'd bump it the other way. If I was bumping it, I'd bump
Right.
it the other way because of that.
No, bump it up.
Make it 19,
Bump it up.
594 and 37 even.
right. That
How
that
was
was
that? 37 even, Aaron?
Maybe just get rid of the pennies then. Just make it 352
Just
and
round it off.
2.
That's fine.
52 and 42.
So are we keeping AHIP at the 37,000 and the LEAP at the 19,000
Yeah,
though?
just move the 4 cents down to LEAP so that it's not
there you go.
Mm-hmm.
looking. That'll make me happy. Thank you.
Whoops.
And then yeah.
There, prettier.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then the overage from up here. So the 4,000 and the 3,000 you wanted to put into LEAP,
Yes.
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Bless you.
Thank you.
All right. Now we're moving on to CV3.
Just to make sure I understand this correctly, there's $134,009.60 available.
Correct.
It seems like based on the scoring, we need to just figure out some way of splitting up CRHA and Habitat. Pearl Transit score was pretty significantly below the other two, and I don't think we should give funds to.
Well, let me ask you this, is Pearl Transit on the line? Because I could see how their project could benefit some of our most challenged people of the city, but to me, their application wasn't very clear. So being that we've already funded Habitat, if they had the opportunity to maybe clear up some of those question marks, I wouldn't have a problem with giving them some funding. But that was just mine.
I don't see them on the line.
All right. Well,
I also had difficulty with their application.
I had a long list of questions for them, so I think in their absence, not being able to answer those questions, I would have a problem with allocating funds.
Me too.
And I love the idea.
Right.
Just needed some more clarity in the application. Pearl Transit.
Do we have a sense of what CRHA would do with partial funding? It seems like based on the fact that they requested far beyond what could have ever possibly been granted to them here, they are anticipating having multiple funding sources, but do we have any clarity on what they would do with the partial funding?
Keep in mind, they are trying to accomplish funding a staff member as well as carry out a housing program. I do have 2 members from CRHA on the line, and I see one of them has their hand raised. I'm going to let Kathleen speak to the task force. Kathleen, you're on the line. You'll have to unmute your microphone.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Yes, we were initially looking to develop programming that not only addressed the current crisis, but also became an anchor service embedded within our housing communities. Of course, we need funding before the program starts, but if we receive reduced funding, we have some options for scaling back our program plans until we're able to supplement it, or delay just a bit if we don't have any funding at all. Some options are, one of the things we had been excited about with CV3 was options for multiple years. And that's why we had applied for a larger amount. And some options would be to reduce the number of years, even look at 1 year of funding. We'd also have an option of just getting funding for rental assistance. Regardless of whether we receive funding, we'll definitely pursue other sources.
I missed all of that.
Excuse me, our funding for the program comes to about 110 a year, but part of that was, as we said, funding a staff person, but we're also open to considering, rental assistance funding as well.
For me personally, the part of the CRHA application, I mean, it's all good, but the rental assistance part definitely was appealing to me in terms of our current health crisis, pandemic, and then also the economic squeeze that folks are feeling.
We have set up a rental assistance fund, and any funding that we were able to get, we could definitely plug right into that. And we would definitely have a lot of individuals that would benefit greatly from this.
That's only though for your clients, right? It's not a citywide assistance. It's only for people that are either in public housing or vouchers.
That is correct. There's currently several other programs in place to assist city residents with economic development and TJPDC. We're serving individuals in our neighborhoods who the average income is less than $13,000. So this amount would cover actually a large amount of people.
And this is a part of your eviction diversion program?
Yes, we're trying to keep as many people housed as we can.
I'm assuming not, because it wasn't specifically mentioned, but is any of the funds available to those who are getting the supplemental rent assistance? What I call SISRAP, which I don't think anyone else calls it that.
CSRAP. Well, one of the challenges is this funding is for city residents. So if we were looking at individuals who applied for rental assistance with us, we would have to make sure they were within city limits.
Okay.
I have one more hand raised, Mr. John Sales from CRHA. John, you're on with the task force. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Good evening, everyone, and I thank you all for taking a look at our applications. I really jumped on, and Kathleen did a great job of explaining the application, but I jumped on to explain the reason for the acts and the dollar value. We really looked at the total CV3 money and looked at, hey, this is a program that housing has always been identified as an area of weakness for the city. So upon prioritization of the programs, we thought this would be a competitive application no matter what was submitted with econ, because we were looking at multiple different aspects, not only rental assistance, but the eviction diversion, working with individuals who are back in rent, getting them on repayment agreements and working with them on financial training and budgeting. We thought that was something that not only would benefit the community, but directly benefit families who need that assistance. Most of 100% of our families are on rent payments that they should be able to afford. But sometimes budgeting and things happen during a month where you can't afford to pay your rent. So we are talking about assisting families with that and designing a program where we put a family in this program and we're able to assist them with budgeting. And as long as they stay on this track of making consistent payments, we're rewarding them as well by forgiving payments. And we are currently under redevelopment. And we're going to a model where we're not as flexible when it comes to not evicting families who have not paid their rent. So we looked at it as an opportunity to both educate residents that are living in the community while also providing direct services to the individuals as well, because we won't have the flexibility to not evict families once we're in the tax credit model, because not evicting families directly affects the investors who own the property. And that's all I had to say, unless there's some questions from anyone on the panel.
Mr. Sales.
Yes.
The hiring of the housing stabilization coordinator, what would be the role of that person?
That person would work directly with the families, bringing them in, working on the repayment agreements. Because oftentimes when you see a repayment agreement, it's kind of sort of like the mortgage forbearance. It's a cookie cutter. I mean, it's the same boilerplate repayment agreement. It doesn't look at what you can afford, and it doesn't look at your income, and doesn't take into account just normal life things happening. So we're talking about hiring somebody who's going to work with the families to identify weaknesses of where they are with budgeting, while also creating a repayment agreement that the individual can afford. Because anyone can sign a repayment agreement and say, hey, we want you to pay us $50. But that's not, 9 times out of 10, that's not going to happen. I mean, our average rents are $254. So having someone pay an extra $50 a month could really be a big barrier. And if we're saying, hey, we're going to evict you if you don't follow through with this repayment agreement, I mean, 9 times out of 10, they're going to get evicted because you put a repayment agreement in there that they can't afford. So we're talking about hiring somebody that can work with the individual to execute that repayment agreement while also working with them consistently to follow through and giving the budgeting and training and everything that's needed.
So, and also flexibility as well.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess for Mr. Sales, I just wanted to revisit the question of the amount asked for here is, much higher than what we have available. How do you see that working?
When we were working on that application, we knew that the ask was a lot. But we also thought that the application that we're submitting for housing, it's very competitive. As you can see with grading, scoring wise, I mean, it scored higher than the econ application. And I think when you look at prioritizations of what the city council and what the community is asking for is housing. And I think our application directly will benefit individuals that are living in our community. And when we're talking about equity, this is a way of doing that. I mean, that's one thing that you don't learn in school is budgeting and financing. So when